So, I see that Guns N' Roses is in the news. It's pretty bad when people older than I am have to do something silly to get themselves back into whatever the hell good graces of relevance matters today. But I figured that was a good chance for me to tell my 9/11 story. It's not the 9/11 most people would think about, but the 9/11 of 1992, as I recall. It was the year of the Metallica and Guns N' Roses stadium tour, or whatever you want, back then. And my sister and I and some friends of ours had gotten some tickets to see Faith No More, Metallica, and Guns N' Roses at Foxboro Stadium in September of that year, on September 11th as it was. And about August, 8th or so, they played in Montreal, and that's when Hetfield got torched by his pyrotechnics. So it was an interesting tour. But really nothing too silly at that time. And, we got to the show. It was sold out. We had reasonably awful seats, about halfway up, halfway down the stadium from where the stage was, that I recall. And Faith No More was exceptional. I always liked them. They were, for whatever that was worth, well worth the ticket price just to see them, to me. They were great. I do recall that. And there was a bit of a set change after their set, and then Metallica came on, and they were great. And I think it was, if not the first concert that Hetfield played his own guitar after he was burned. He still had, I remember, the bandages on his arm, but he played. I think it may have been one of the first, if not the first, concerts that he played after the incident. But they did a hell of a job. And the I don't know his name, but the hairy guy from Faith No More came out and played with him at the end, and it was just exceptional. The guy with the big hair, it was great up to that point, and I wish we had left at that point. But then there was the set change between Metallica and GNR, and you got 50,000-ish. It was a sellout, so you got a lot of people in that stadium. And one of the things I remembered when we got there, I think I just turned 20, or was just about to turn 21. I wasn't 21 yet. And I noted that the beer concessions were selling with reusable cups. They wanted to be green and recyclable. And they were selling these big honking plastic mugs that you could take back and then refill, which sure seems like a good idea at the time, because it ticks all the right boxes, right? But we had probably what turned out to be a 2-ish hour intermission, if you want to call it that, between Metallica, their mid-set, and then Guns N' Roses coming on as the finale. And I mean, people were starting to get restless. It was a little noisy. There wasn't anything terrible, anything ridiculous going on for about 30 or 40 minutes. And then I kind of looked up behind me. We were about halfway up the stadium on one side. And I looked up and I saw this mug, one of these reusable mugs, flying out into the distance from the top levels. And it went down below us and just ganked somebody off of the head. And at that moment, all hell broke loose. It was full-on Armageddon in that stadium. There was those cups were coming from all directions, whether they were full of beer or urine or whatever. And all we could do was kind of put our arms up and try to block the girls that we were with from getting beamed by this crap. And that went on. It was probably only minutes, but it seemed like an eternity as we were just getting pelted by this garbage. And I remember that Mom and Dad had seen, I think, on the TV from the news at that time that there was a riot going on at Foxboro Stadium. We were, and it was to some extent. But what I remember at that point is, after several minutes of this idiocy with this crap flying around and us trying to deflect what we could to keep people around us from getting destroyed by this garbage, is they had these big screens set up around, rudimentary giant screens back in the 90s, early 90s, where they would show the stage on these things. So you could kind of see what was going on from your nosebleed. Cheapo seats, which weren't terribly cheap that I recall, but the cheapo seats anyway. And apparently at some point, one of the cameramen found this one girl who had pulled her shirt up, and he focused on her. They put her up on the big screen, and there was just these tits on the big screen. And all of a sudden, at that point, everything just went record scratch. Everything that was in the midair stopped, flew back to the person who had thrown it, hit them in the face, and then everyone started cheering. And the next 30 or 40 minutes, that's what we saw on the TVs, on these big screens in this stadium, was these girls who were pulling their tops up and showing us whatever the show, shaking their moneymakers, as it were, to show us what they were wanting to do to the band, I suppose, at that time. But it stopped the riot long enough for them to get through the rest of the ridiculous set change and actually get to Guns N' Roses coming out on stage, which they did. And eventually they did, and they started their set. And I don't remember any of the songs because I never really liked Guns N' Roses in the first place. But I do recall that after about, 4, 5, 6 songs, Axl got pissed off at something and just sat down on the front of the stage and, quote, sang the rest of the bloody set sitting down, and it was as awful as I expected they would be. So, Faith No More, excellent at the time, very good. I'd go see them today if I knew they were still around. They were very good. Metallica, of course, was very good. Guns N' Roses lived down to my expectations. But anyway, that was what I recall of my 9/11 experience back in 1992, being at a concert in Foxboro Stadium in Massachusetts, listening to Faith No More, Guns N' Roses, and, well, eventually, for a short period of terrible time, but it was something else. So that's my story of 9/11, 1992. Hope you all having a good day. Take care.